A lot of people pick up the switchaxe, give it a few swings, get absolutely bullied by a monster and just straight up give up. And honestly, yeah, this weapon can make you feel that way at first, even though it's one of the most brutal weapons in the entire game. But in this video, I'm narrowing down to just 3 things. Master these 3 things, you're gonna master the weapon. This is Tateyu, and welcome to the actual combat tutorial for switchaxe. Alright, the first thing you gotta do is battery up. We're talking about your switch gauge and your amp gauge. What about the power axe? Let's just forget about it. You gain switch gauge by hitting the monster in axe mode, and you burn through it when you use moves in sword mode. See that little line right in the middle of your switch gauge? If your juice is lower than that line and you're trying to morph from axe to sword, you'll be forced into a slow recharge or reload animation. It's slow, so never do it. Now, you build up your amp gauge by landing hits in sword mode. Once you're in that amped state, your sword hits will carry extra fire burst, and you will unlock some seriously powerful finishers. Amp state will last 45 seconds. While we're on the subject, there are several file types, but just remember that the power files builds up your amp gauge way slower than all the other files. So things get really simple now. You want to stay in that amp state as long as you possibly can, and you need to make sure your switch gauge doesn't fall too far behind that line. Here is exactly what you should do. When it comes to building your amp gauge, the absolute best moves you got are the double slash followed by the heavenward flurry in sword mode. They fill your amp gauge the most, plus they're fast and they hit hard. Whenever you have the window, just throw them out. But if you follow up after the left rising slash, which is the 3rd hit of your basic combo in sword mode, that double slash is going to turn into a triple slash. And then you move on to the heavenward flurry. It's a bit slower, so keep that timing in mind. For your switch gauge, your absolute best moves are the spiral burst slash and the heavy slam finisher. If you are in axe mode and wanted to do a spiral burst slash, you have to do the whole 9 yards. Overhead slash or forward overhead smash first, then side slash, and then spiral burst slash. It takes forever. But with switchaxe, the big brain play is to basically always stay in sword mode and only switch back to axe mode to recharge your gauge. So when you're in sword mode, after almost any sword attack, or if you just hold a direction and press your morph button, you will do a morph side slash, and immediately after that, boom, spiral burst slash. The only exception to this rule are the right rising slash, left rising slash, and counter rising slash. If you morph after those specific moves, you will go into a morph double slash and then the spiral burst slash, which takes a bit more time. Aside from standard combos, you can also trigger the spiral burst slash right after an offset, an unbridled slash, or a full release slash. As for the heavy slam finisher, what I mean is a specific move you get either right after you land a wound attack or after a so-called perfect offset where you choose the axe attack follow-up. Both of these follow-ups will instant fill a massive chunk of your switch gauge. So, to sum it up for real combat, the most common ways you're going to replenish your switch gauge are through wound attack, through perfect offset, or if you're in sword mode, just morph once, do spiral burst slash, and morph right back. Now for the second thing, protecting yourself. The switchaxe actually offers us great protection in each mode. In axe mode, you have the offset rising slash. You can use this literally at any time, no setup moves required. It's just a single fast clean hit. The only downside is that the counter timing actually comes out a bit late in the animation, which means you have to do the move sooner. You gotta press the button right when the monster starts its attack, instead of waiting for the last second. After offset, if it's a perfect offset, you can choose to follow up in either axe or sword mode. Like we talked about earlier, that axe finisher will refill a huge chunk of your switch gauge. But hey, if your gauge is already full, you can always go right into sword mode instead. If it's not a perfect offset, you can choose to do either spiral burst slash for the gauge or heavy slam for the raw damage. Just keep in mind that these follow-ups can feel pretty clunky, so whether you do them or not really depends on the situation. In sword mode, switchaxe has even more powerful tool, counter rising slash. Now it looks like a parry, but honestly it feels a lot more like a guard. It can parry grapples and you will receive some damage. But a perfectly timed counter rising slash reduces that damage by a massive 80%, and you will see flash appears around you. Even if your timing is a bit off, it still gives you a 50% damage reduction. Naturally, after counter rising slash, you will do a rising slash, hence the name. But you can actually cancel that follow-up slash with evade. This is huge because it lets you keep countering back to back without getting locked into the slash, which is perfect for dealing with multiple hits. And one extra synergy, right after offside rising slash, you can go directly into Heavenward Flurry. And also remember, you can't do 2 counter rising slash in a row, or it'll become a morph. So at least do a sidestep first, then get ready for another counter. Now for the last thing, how to actually deal damage and what your flow should look like in a real fight. With everything we just talked about, this part is going to be super easy. Every single time you're in a combat, whether it's right after your sneak attacks or whatever, you want to stay in sword mode. Just keep doing your basic slashing and observe the monster. If you have the opening, switch it up to the double slash into Heavenward Flurry combo for that extra amp gauge and big damage. When the monster's attack comes at you, just do your counter rising slash. If you feel like another hit is coming right after it, don't do the follow-up slash. Just evade and get ready to counter rising slash again. While you're doing all this, keep an eye on your switch gauge. If it's closing in on or lower than that line, find a quick window, switch back to axe mode, do spiral burst slash, and switch right back to sword. And if you completely burn through all your switch gauge or somehow get stuck in axe mode, don't panic. Just do normal attacks and wait for an offset. It'll take 0 effort to refill your gauge and get you right back into sword mode. Now, what if you get a massive window, like after a specific heavy attack or when the monster gets knocked down flat on the ground? That's when you choose between the Elemental Discharge or Unbridled Slash. When you're in amped state, you can go for Elemental Discharge, but whatever you do, never do the zero-sum version where you climb onto the monster by holding the button. Instead, depending on how much time you have in that window, you can either do the full Elemental Discharge finisher, or you can pull back on your analog stick to do a finishing discharge, which is the quicker but less damaging version. After either of those finishers, you can transition directly into Unbridled Slash or Full Release Slash. If you don't do any follow-up after Elemental Discharge, you're just gonna awkwardly transition back to axe mode with absolutely nothing to follow up with. So instead, when there's a window, your best bet is go straight into Unbridled Slash without doing Elemental Discharge first, or after Counter Rising Slash with Evade Cancel. It really depends on the situation. Also, you need to choose between the regular Unbridled Slash or the full release. After either one, you will go back to Axe mode, but you can immediately follow it up with Spiral Burst Slash like we mentioned earlier, or an Offside Rising Slash if things get out of hand. One last thing about your focus attack. You can actually morph up to 2 times while you're slashing away, but keep in mind, staying in sword mode is gonna absolutely burn through your switch gauge. Now, it does have a super powerful finisher if you happen to be in the amped state, so definitely go for it if you are. But if you're not amped up, just wrap things up in axe mode to save that juice. And that is how you actually use the switch axe in real combat. This is Tateyu. If this video completely changed the way you look at the switch axe, smash that like button. I'm gonna breaking down the weapons in Wilds just like this, so hit subscribe right now if you want to master the rest of the arsenal. Thanks for watching, love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.